People don't hear words, they hear messages. Now, this is an incredibly important concept in a woke generation because tone ends up being powerful. The tone that you speak with, there's a spiritual tag attached to your words. And those spiritual tags, I think, end up being much more powerful than you could ever imagine. Both sides tend to accuse one another of, oh, they're sending dog whistles, they're using key words, they're using key phrases to awake the base and to get them angry and stir them up. And actually, there's a lot of truth to that because key words can do that. They can accentuate a tag and really push it forward to where people respond. And part of what's going on in this entire woke world is we've lost our moral base. We have almost no basis on which to judge right or wrong. So in its place, we've created this kind of vacuum where right or wrong tends to be judged according to wokeness, according to intensity, according to passion. So now how I present my message tends to be all in, and it's angry, and it's maybe even satirical and ridiculing, and it's condemning, and there can be actually no room for content and listening. And when these kinds of tags and these kinds of tones get attached to our words, then the other person almost automatically stops dealing with content and starts dealing with that tone, and they're responding in all kinds of different ways. Now, most people aren't able to step back and go, oh, let me examine the tone that is being spoken right now, and let me examine my response to the tone that is going on right now. Instead, what happens is this word that I use, which is called message. I'm responding to the entire package. And right now, you have people speaking past one another because you already have established political camps. You already have established theological zones. You have all of these people who are fixated where they are, and certain words and certain phrases are going to be dog whistles. They're going to elicit responses. They're going to wake up the woke, emotional, spiritual areas in the different people. So you have almost an immediate and guaranteed response that's going on with virtually no listening. One of the most powerful things that we can do is actually to understand some of these concepts. We're able to come along and start separating this stuff out. And you can begin to talk to people and say, do you realize that you're talking with a religious tone? And they're like, oh, you got to be kidding. These can be people who are totally non-religious. Well, guess what? Man is a spiritual being. What I mean by that in terms of spiritual being, we have consciences. We have a sense of right and wrong. And so we respond to that voice. We respond to that tone when people speak in terms of right and wrong. And so you come along and you remove religion, you remove Christianity, you remove any basis for moral decisions, but then we're still instinctively moral. We're still instinctively religious. And so now it's like I'm hungry for something that's going to awaken that part of me and speak to that part of me, and wokeness jumps into that vacuum. So here I am, I'm responding to high emotions, and I'm responding to a sense of right and wrong, and I may or may not be understanding content at all. I may or may not be responding to logic or what's smart at all. We live in a society right now that is really responding to the factors that I'm talking about at an extremely high level. And when you sit down and you try to talk to people, it's like there's no ability to hear. All they can hear is these kinds of words and how they're spoken. It's interesting to me in the whole Black Lives Matter and the policemen shooting people and et cetera. Many times people don't really understand the numbers. They don't understand the statistics. And in fact, if you try to talk actual numbers, you try to talk actual statistics, and let's take a look at what the picture actually looks like, nobody's ready to listen. And so it's so important. We need to get back to a place of reality, number one, But we also need to recognize that this spiritual side of people exists, and we've tried to write it off, and we've tried to fill it with wokeness. That doesn't work. So what does work? Well, the beginning part of reaching this spiritual side, actually, in a healthy way, is connection. If I can start a listening place, if I can start a connection place, and I can get a better spiritual feel going on between me and another person, I've got a starting place to work with this thing. Many times in counseling, this is a technique that I use when I'm working with people who are in an intense, difficult place. I don't even want to talk about the problem area. I want to listen to them. I want to talk to them. I want to find out who they are. If I can get them to change spiritual location, I can actually change the way they will hear, or if they can hear me. So I'm spending time. I'm getting to know who you are. I'm developing I call it a spiritual climate, a spiritual tone with spiritual tags, where all of a sudden you and I are actually listening. We're not uptight. The woke isn't being triggered. The anger isn't being triggered. And we're able to listen to one another. Now I'm able to transition and actually talk to you about the counseling need. Something like this is needed at a national level. We need this thing where we actually just kind of put away all of that craziness, put away the sense of right and wrong, who's right, who's wrong, who has better ideas, who has worse ideas. Can we actually just be people? Can we connect? Can we begin to establish that rapport back and forth and create a kind of a climate where there's better spiritual tags and tones, and I'm not trying to belittle you or control you or move myself into a right position and you into a wrong position. If I can actually start at this level of connection and start at a level of, here's positive goals. Can you agree with those positive goals? And we can actually sit down in a room and understand that, wow, both parties here have similar goals of positive outcomes. They just have very different ideas in terms of how to get there. This is so, so important. If you understand message and you understand spiritual triggers and spiritual tags and what's going on out there, you can look at the woke world and start to figure out, oh, we're hurling a sense of right and wrong and better and worse and low life and you're this despicable being. We're hurling that kind of stuff at one another and then expecting to create a good society. It won't work. Message is incredibly powerful. Connection is the most powerful tool to move message to a better place. If we would actually learn to pay attention to some of these kinds of things, we might be able to work out our differences. I hope that maybe you can try this with like even one person, where you sit down and maybe you have differences, or maybe you don't even have differences. Maybe it's more of a counselor thing like I was talking about, and they're in almost a traumatized place, and you're able to just take that and set it aside a little bit and just let's just connect. Let's just talk and create a better atmosphere. Out of that better atmosphere, solve things. Try it. I think if you'll work through this and learn to be much better in this area of message and spiritual tags and tones, you'll find that, wow, relationships can get better, hope can come back in, and we can actually work towards better outcomes. Check it out. Try it. We'll see you next time on Effective Heart Change.
Video production, editing, and audio by Matthew. Set design and setup by Ashley. Content recorded live at Studio 104.